I don't buy new plastic products, or products packaged in plastic. That's a pretty strong statement, and it's almost true. This is all the plastic waste that I generated in 2011, last year. It's both recyclable and non-recyclable plastic, and it weighs about 2 pounds, which is about 2% of what the average American generates just at home in a year. What's inside are things that I couldn't avoid, or things that I inadvertently ended up with despite my best efforts. So things like prescription bottles, supplements for my cat, a few caps from glass bottles, and packing tape. Because before I place orders online, I request no plastic packaging, and yet sometimes I end up with packing tape. What's not in here are things like plastic bags, plastic bottles, plastic cups, plastic utensils, plastic food wrappers, plastic food containers, plastic clamshells, and all the single-use disposable plastics that come into our lives on a daily basis. Now, this may seem pretty extreme, and I admit that it is, and I'm not here to try to convince you to collect all your plastic or to try to do without plastic completely or to avoid every single plastic thing that comes into your life. What I want to do is use myself as an example to show what's possible. Here's the thing. I wasn't always like this. 5 years ago, I was the average American. I ate convenience foods from microwavable containers on a regular basis. I requested double plastic bags at the grocery store. I would get a bottle of water at the gym every time I went and throw it in the trash because there wasn't any recycling handy. And I pretty much bought whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, without thinking about it. I actually considered myself an environmentalist, but apparently my actions were not in line with my values. And then one night, sitting at my computer, I stumbled across an article by Susan Casey describing how plastic is polluting our oceans and how animals, and marine animals, are eating that plastic. And I saw a photo that changed my life completely. It was a dead albatross chick on Midway Island, thousands of miles from civilization. And it was full of plastic pieces, bottle caps, things that I was using on a daily basis. Its mother had gathered this food up from the ocean and fed it to it, and it had died. And at that point, I realized that my actions were having an impact on creatures that I hadn't even known existed. And I also discovered a maternal instinct inside myself that I hadn't known existed. And I knew I had to do something about it, and I knew I had to change, just like that. So I thought, what can I do? Is it possible to live without plastic? Wouldn't it be fun to try and see if I could? So I decided to give it a shot, and I also decided to figure out what my own plastic footprint was, because I really had no idea. So I started collecting all my plastic in a box under my kitchen table, and being an accountant, I set up a spreadsheet so I could tally it all up, and I created a blog. The blog was called Fake Plastic Fish at the time, after my favorite band Radiohead song, Fake Plastic Trees. And it's now called My Plastic Free Life. This is my first week of plastic trash. This is the first 6 months of 2007. And as you can see, this is what my annual plastic waste looks like now. But you might say, okay, this problem, this plastic problem, or all the environmental problems that we face are so huge, so impossibly huge. How can one individual make a difference when the plastic problem looks like this? We see this every time we leave our house. But I say our individual personal actions and choices do make a huge difference. And I came up with 8 reasons why. For me, the very first reason was because when I figured out that I was doing harm, and I really got that, and I really realized what I was doing, I had to stop. I really had no choice. But there are lots of other reasons. Another reason that people start considering how much plastic is in their lives is because they're concerned about their health and the health of their families. Plastics, as we know, may contain thousands of different additives. And some of the ones that we know about that are worrisome are bisphenol A, phthalates, dioxins, which are produced when PVC is made, perfluorochemicals. And what's really worrisome is that there are thousands of additives that can be added to plastics, and manufacturers are not required to disclose any of them to the public. So even if something is labeled BPA-free, that tells you what's not in it. It doesn't tell you what is. I was alarmed to discover that there are antibacterials in some, quote, food-safe plastics. There are toxic flame retardants in some plastics. And if you're a vegetarian, you might be alarmed to find out that some plastic bags actually contain animal fat to help them be slippery. So that's one reason. Another reason is that the personal choices that we make help us support ethical businesses that are creating alternative products. And I've discovered tons of them over the last 5 years. So for example, I like to support stores that offer foods in bulk bins where I can bring my own bags and containers and fill them up myself without any plastic packaging. Companies that offer products in refillable glass that can be returned and refilled. Online companies that are producing products that are alternatives to plastic. And innovative entrepreneurs who are making different kinds of packaging. This is a compostable cardboard lip balm tube, which squeezes from the bottom. It's a really great idea. And here's a woman who makes a mascara in a metal tube where you can reuse the brush over and over again without throwing it away and getting a new one. Another reason that personal changes matter is because they help us develop our ingenuity and self-reliance and creativity. And I've had to develop lots of different strategies because obviously there isn't always a plastic-free alternative for everything that I'm used to using. So one strategy is bringing my own. I bring my own bottle, bring my own travel mug. I think Clean Canteen is here. They have actually a bottle that doesn't even have a plastic cap. They have a couple different ones. I bring my own food containers to restaurants, my own utensils. I even carry a glass drinking straw, as Milo mentioned yesterday. This is what my grocery shopping looks like. I go to the bakery and get bread in a cloth bag, and even meat from the butcher for my cats in a stainless steel pot. Another strategy is making my own. When I can't find it, I make it myself. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. One of my favorites is homemade chocolate syrup, which is just awesome. Another is baking soda used for deodorant, which works better than any other deodorant I've ever used. And I even crocheted new pads for my headphones when the plastic foam pads wore out. But some things don't turn out so well. My pita bread experiment was not so great. Those things could have been a weapon. And when I tried to make liquid soap out of solid soap, it was a green, slimy, awful disaster. Because liquid soap and solid soap are not the same thing. But I never would have learned that if I hadn't been trying to avoid plastic, right? So all through these 5 years, I've been developing skills that I never probably would have if I hadn't been trying to take it upon myself to make these changes. Another reason that personal changes matter. Oh, and by the way, if I can't make it myself, I will find somebody on Etsy who invariably can. Another thing is that we can fix things. So when my hairdryer broke, I was able to fix it. Another strategy is borrowing and sharing, using tool lending libraries, car sharing, all kinds of ways to get around buying new stuff. buying used or refurbished, finding things from Craigslist or secondhand thrift stores. These are ways that I'm able to still use technology, but not contribute to buying and producing new plastic. Sometimes, though, I need something and it's not available, and I can't make it myself and I can't find it. And I have to ask myself, is this something that I really need? Is this something that's really going to make me happy? And sometimes the answer is no. I didn't need this. I mean, it tasted really yummy. That's what I was living on before I started this. But this is what my food looks like now. And it's a lot more healthy. There are lots of plastic toys that I would really like to have. The latest is a Wii dance thing that my friend has. But when it really gets right down to it, the things in life that make me happy actually are not made from or packaged in plastic, or don't have to be. Another reason that personal change and personal action is important is because when we take personal action, we discover the limits to personal action. And what I mean by that is, sometimes you do as much as you can, but you still need something that's not there. And at that point, you realize you have to ask companies to change, or start a company yourself. I've asked a lot of companies to change, and I've had some successes. So, for example, I wrote to a soap nuts company asking them to stop packaging their soap nuts in plastic bags, and within a month, they had switched to recycled paper. On a bigger scale, when it came time to change my Brita water filter cartridge, I tried to figure out what to do with it. Is this something that can be recycled? And I discovered that in Germany, there's actually a recycling system. People can take them back to the store and get them sent back to Brita, and Brita recycles them. But in the United States, Brita is owned by Clorox, and at that time, Clorox had no way for us to recycle them. So I contacted Clorox, and I said, why can't you recycle them? And they said, because we don't think our customers care enough. Our focus groups have shown that. So I thought it was my job to show them that their customers really did care. So I set up a website, got a bunch of people together, blogged, said, hey kids, let's start a campaign. And we did. We got 16,000 signatures. And we had people send us their used Brita filters from all over North America. And 8 months later, after lots of ripples and publicity and blog posts and working, we got news that Brita had actually recycled or come up with a recycling program for Brita filters. They partnered with Preserve. And I was able to deliver those filters to a participating Whole Foods restaurant in Oakland to be sent to Preserve to be recycled into toothbrushes and things like that. Another reason that personal change is important is because once we really hit the wall and companies won't change, that's when we know where it's time to focus our energies in asking for legislative change. And we need a lot of it when it comes to plastic. We need bans on single-use disposables, extended producer responsibility legislation, making producers responsible for the full life cycle of the products they produce, updated toxic chemical legislation, and full disclosure of what the chemicals in different plastics are so that we as consumers know. But the final reason, and to me the most important reason that personal change matters, is that the actions that we take are magnified by the example that we set for other people. So it could be something as simple as bringing your own bag to the store and letting other people see you do it and get the idea that that is something that is normal. Or going further, giving presentations to kids in classes, putting on a wacky costume and walking across town, or writing a book. And I spent last year working on writing this book, compiling my experiences, my know-how, the things that I've discovered, but also tips from people in my blogging community who read my blog and who I couldn't have figured out most of this stuff without. And I've got stories inspiring stories about other people who have gone further. And Milo, who was here yesterday, is one of the stories in my book. Is Milo here? There's Milo. Milo started a campaign to get restaurants to ask people before giving them a plastic straw automatically, which seems so obvious. And I was really lucky to find a publisher that was willing to create this book completely plastic-free, with no plastic glue or plastic threads or plastic coatings. I'm really excited about this. I'll be happy to sign books for you with my refillable fountain pen. What I want to end up with is, you know, as so many people have been saying over the course of this week, we are the change that we seek. And it's so true. We can't wait for other people. We can't wait for other companies. We can't wait for our governments. We have the power to change the menu. And we have the power to change the world. Thank you.